Oh my god, hey! Welcome back to my Stagey YouTube channel. If you're meeting me now for the first time, hello! My name is Mickey Joe and I'm obsessed with all things theatre. And this is my theatre-themed YouTube channel, where primarily I review the shows that I have been invited to go and see as an independent theatre critic here in the UK. Although I feel like it's been ages since I've actually sat down to do a proper video review on YouTube. So here we are beginning 2023 and we are back in the swing of things with lots of press nights and gala nights happening. And this week, I finally got to go and see the gala night performance of Allegiance. My tickets for this were gifted. I was invited by the producers. Very grateful to them for inviting me, and very grateful that I finally got to see this show, because I've had the chance to go and see this in rehearsals to capture a little bit of content for socials, and I got to go to the photo call with other members of the press just the other day. So I'd been anticipating this show an awful lot, and it's had a life before on Broadway, and it's coming over here with George Takei, huge star, and Telly Leung, huge Broadway and TV star. So needless to say, I was very excited about this one. And in today's video, I'm going to be telling you what I actually thought of the show. Did it live up to my lofty expectations? Because it's fair to say it's at a venue that I can find to be very hit and miss. It's a smaller space, it's an off-West End venue, a little gem of a theatre called the Charing Cross, and its current seating arrangement is in traverse, which means half of the audience is on each side of the stage, and if you look beyond the stage, you see the other half of the audience. This level of intimacy in this particular layout does not work for every single show that is produced there. And in the US, Allegiance was on Broadway at a big traditional proscenium arch Broadway house. So for it to come over to London and be playing a very small, very intimate, very uniquely sized off-West End venue was definitely intriguing. So we're going to talk about, does Allegiance work in this space? Does it work in London? What did I think of the show? If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe to my Stagey YouTube channel. I have plenty more content coming all the time. I have so many more things that I need to review, and I have so many more shows that I'm going to be seeing very soon. If you want to see more of my trip to Allegiance, as well as the other shows that I am seeing this week, stay tuned for this upcoming weekend's return of Oh My God Hey, my weekly vlog series that follows me around all of my theatre trips. And finally, if you want to see some extra exclusive content, early previews of my new videos, as well as some exclusive performance footage from Allegiance rehearsals, you can become one of my YouTube members. All you have to do is click on the link in the description down below and sign up to be a member. You get access to lots of exclusive content. I try and post a new video almost every day. It costs £2.99 a month, or whatever the equivalent is in your currency. Thank you so much. Now, let's talk about Allegiance. So Allegiance is very much a personal passion project for George Takei. It tells the story of a dark and unforgivable chapter of American history in the days that followed Pearl Harbor. Seeking vindication for this act of aggression, the US introduced racist legislation that forced all settled Japanese American families to be relocated to internment camps. At this time, Japanese Americans were also not permitted to enlist in the US Army to fight during the Second World War against the Japanese and against the German armies. But when the opportunity to do so was eventually introduced, this divided the Japanese American community. Would they put their life on the line to serve the country that had treated them so poorly, to demonstrate their loyalty and their allegiance? Or would they stand against the people who had become their oppressors? And this is what Allegiance talks about. It follows one family who are divided amongst themselves as to what is the best course of action and what their political stance is during this difficult time. And this is so personal for George Takei because he was affected by this as a child. He and his family were moved to an internment camp. It's an incredible story. It's an important story, and one that I don't think has been talked about or documented or explored enough in art and culture. I don't think we are discussing enough the atrocities that Japanese Americans had to endure during this period. Because even though this is obviously deeply historical and very specific to the events of the Second World War, it's the ease with which American citizens were turned against and victimized and racially profiled, essentially, that bears remembering, because unfortunately we can effortlessly draw parallels with the ways that entire communities of people are being treated today in society. It's this entire concept of racial scapegoating, and that makes this story a really important one to pay attention to. So for that reason, I'm really pleased that it is being staged, but did I actually enjoy the show? So I will keep you in suspense no longer. I thought this was going to be pretty good from some of the rehearsal that I had seen, from snippets of the show, and I came to find out last night it is actually fantastic. This is one of the best things I've ever seen at the Charing Cross Theatre. It's one of the first really great things that I've seen this year, and I am happily giving it a 5-star review. It started to dawn on me early in the first act just how good this was, and then every subsequent scene just confirmed to me it's a really fantastic production. I would describe this as powerful and important and heartbreaking. It's beautifully staged. It's incredibly performed. You have this entire cast, who I'm going to speak about more specifically, but these incredible rising talents. It makes expert use of the space. The score is so passionate. I just think it's a really compelling piece of theatre that deserves all of the accolades. I want nothing but success for this production. I think it's remarkable. And I think one of the best things about it is the level of nuance that it portrays. It centers, obviously, the Japanese characters in this narrative. It's not about the white characters in the periphery of their experiences. It talks about their culture, it talks about their family. You have these recognizable family dynamics. All of the characters are deeply layered, and we get to explore so many little supporting characters. But rather than something like a Les Miserables, where everyone is pretty united against a terrible regime, it's actually much richer than that here, because you have these characters who all exist somewhere on a political spectrum of response to what is happening to them. People have very layered and nuanced feelings, and their feelings adapt through different circumstances. You have this character of Sam Kimura, who is very much pro the US, and he wants to enlist, and he wants to demonstrate his allegiance as a loyal American, and he wants to fight in the army. And then there are things that happen throughout the show that test his unwavering loyalty. And all of that, all of his characterization and all of his sister's characterization is so deeply informed by their family history that you come to find out about. Every single plot point feels earned and realistic. Where you have romantic subplot, it feels genuine, it doesn't feel forced. It all feels incredibly human, but also remarkable and uplifting and inspirational in many ways, and also tragic and devastating. It has all of the things. Everything that Les Mis offers you as this kind of a historical, romantic, devastating epic, Allegiance has all of those things baked into it as well. So I want to talk to you about two of my favourite numbers in the show. These both happen in the first act, and they are stirring, powerful solos from two of our principal characters. The first one comes from Sami Kimura. He sings a song called What Makes a Man. It's a thrilling performance from Telly Leung. You understand that you are seeing something of legitimate Broadway quality. Telly is obviously the performer who originated this role on Broadway. He starred in Aladdin on Broadway as Aladdin. He was in the Godspell revival. He is incredible. I'm a huge fan of his already, and he does such a fantastic job here. The vocal is unsurprisingly stunning, but he has such a journey throughout this song. It's this I Want song where he is coming to terms with his purpose, and he is making a decision, and the trajectory that his character goes on throughout this song. He is permanently changed after delivering this number. He has a certain amount of uncertainty beforehand, and after it he is resolved. It's one of those really important turning points in the show. Also, and I'm going to mention this a lot I expect, but staged very well, because you have the audience on both sides. So as he's performing this, I'm thinking, who's going to get that last note? Because it does portray a certain amount of bias, because you can play the whole thing to both sides and you can turn this way and you can turn that way, but whoever you're delivering that big last note to when you finish it, it feels like your favourite side of the audience. And props to both the director and Telly Leung himself for being able to deliver that note, one note, 3 different ways. He does it here while still holding the note, he turns and does it that way, and then side on to the audience. Do you know what that is? Talent and stagecraft, impeccable stagecraft. Later in the first act, his sister sings a song called Higher. This role was originally played on Broadway by Lea Salonga, and in this production it's played by an actress called Ayn Rand Ferrer. She is another remarkable talent. She understudied the role of Kim in the recent UK tour of Miss Saigon, and she has this incredible voice, very familiar of Lea Salonga because it has that power but also that sweetness and this richness to it while still feeling warm and maternal. It's not piercing, it's just like honey. It's a completely delicious vocal tone that's also so passionate and so expressive. She has this character whose wants and desires never really come to the forefront of the plot until this moment in the show. She exists in these scenes and we find out details about her, but we don't necessarily understand everything about her character and why she behaves in a certain way. And with this song, with the song Higher, she gets to talk about her experience and having to grow up too quickly and having to take care of her brother and having to fulfill certain household roles and how that's shaped the person that she has become. It's a beautiful song. It has this soaring chorus and her rendition of it is incredibly stirring. The reason I pick both of these out as the highlight numbers of the show is because of the audience response. It was huge. You just knew that you were seeing a performance of such genuine quality. It's one of those great moments in a theatre. So while I'm here, let's talk about the performances. I've already mentioned Telly Leung. He does a fantastic job with this very challenging character because you see these atrocities that are happening to all of the Japanese Americans, that are happening to his family, and you're so ready to rally against these oppressors and to rally against the soldiers who are treating them terribly. And that isn't necessarily his perspective. He has a much more nuanced take on the situation, and it's not that he is pro those soldiers, and it's really very interesting. The way that he plays that is so convincing. You understand completely why he makes the choices that he does, and you're able almost to empathize with him as well, which I think is probably crucial to the plot of the show because he is our central protagonist. We begin the whole thing with him as an older man, where he is played by George Takei. For the bulk of the show, he is then played in the past by Telly Leung. But like I said, it is vital that we understand why he makes the choices that he does and why he sort of separates from his family ideologically. Ayn Rand Ferrer, who I also mentioned before, gives a beautiful performance, very much ideologically opposed to her brother, and she makes different, very distinct choices, but she plays some beautiful moments throughout the show, and she has this simmering hostility and this frustration, but she's also taking care of all of the other men in her family, and she's this central force that's keeping the peace between all of their sort of tempestuous natures and their stubbornness and their bullishness, and she just has this calmness and this maternal warmth. She has a wonderful presence in the show, and both of them also offer this lovely colour when they get to play their respective romantic subplots. Obviously not with each other, that would be weird, they're brother and sister, but it brings out this lovely contrasting colour in both of their performances where we lose a little bit of the seriousness and we just get to see them both blossom and fall in love. It's a lovely part of the show, and I'm so glad that they both get those subplots. Now we have to talk about George Takei, because even though he has a comparatively smaller role, he is not the star of this show, he is very much a supporting cast member. He gives a fantastic performance, and if this venue is Olivier's eligible, and there's a little bit of a question mark as to whether it could be, he would certainly be nominated for an Olivier Award for Best Supporting Actor in a Musical. His performance is that fantastic. He plays the older, jaded, and bitter and perhaps regretful Sam Kimura at the beginning of the show, and then in the past he plays the same character's grandfather, and he is playful, and he is a little bit indifferent, and he is wise but also silly. It's this wonderful, hilarious and warm performance given by George Takei. He's just this remarkable human being. He's 85, but he's so full of life and enthusiasm and energy, and his smile just radiates the most joy. I had the absolute privilege of speaking to him personally and watching him being interviewed by a host of other people, and the way that he is in real life, you feel that through his performance in this show. Watching him in Allegiance is a lot like getting to know him, because his personality is completely effervescent, and you feel that through his characterizations on stage. Though he is entirely secondary to the plot for most of the duration of the show, he somehow becomes the heart of this narrative. I have 3 more supporting cast members I need to talk about. Bear with me, I know I'm saying a lot of names, but there are some genuinely fantastic performances in this show. This is one of the first unanimously great casts I've seen in a while. The first of those is Megan Gardner, who plays an American nurse named Hannah Campbell. She is the love interest for Telly Leung's character, and she has this sort of resolve that softens as she falls in love with him, sort of unexpectedly. Hers is a beautiful characterization. She sings wonderfully, and it's another really genuine and believable performance. She doesn't just instantly fall in love, you see her melt into it, you see her understanding of the situation and where she is placed politically within that, you see that shift, you see her coming to terms with things and questioning certain elements of the situation that she finds herself in. It's a very well crafted and very intelligent performance that she gives. Mark Anderson is also fantastic in various different roles. He plays various different white American characters, many of whom are aggressors, and it's a challenging role to undertake in this cast, in a predominantly Asian cast, for him to become this embodiment of white American oppression. He does so very well. He does so with believable aggression and intolerance, and it was fascinating to see him play on those things, because I've seen him do some fantastic light and camp comedy parts in the past, so it just reminded me of his remarkable versatility as a performer. Really, really wonderful. And finally, Patrick Monday. I loved Patrick last year in But I'm a Cheerleader. I saw that show twice, and Patrick was one of the greatest performers I saw in either of those 2 productions of the show. I thought he was incredible in this as well. He is an absolute rising star. He is going to have a huge career. He sings wonderfully. He was sort of the most ideologically opposed to Telly Leung's character Sam Kimura. He was very much the force within the internment camp that they were in against conscription and against signing up for the US Army. And he was funny, and he was awkward, and he was charming, and he was just this very real man. You understood absolutely who he was. It wasn't a caricature, it was another layered human being, and that's what I love so much about these performances, is they were all just really well directed as well. So let's talk about a few members of the creative team. So the director and choreographer for this production was Tara Overfield Wilkinson. So she was an associate choreographer on workshop versions of the musical Allegiance over a decade ago in New York, and is now taking on the role of director. And she has staged this really beautifully and sensitively and meaningfully, and she has navigated the traverse space in the Charing Cross Theatre expertly. There is no moment where it feels like either side is being neglected, and that's a very challenging space to achieve something that balanced in, so she's done an excellent job. I do simultaneously question why there is not more Asian representation on the creative team, because it feels as though when we are storytelling that it's important, certainly that the director is representative of who ought to be telling that story. It's fantastic that we have a cast of so many talented Asian performers, but I do think it's also important that we pay attention to diversity and representation within those people that we don't see on stage. I think it's easy for that to sometimes become neglected. So I will say she's done a fantastic job as a director, but I also question that this perhaps could have been a role creatively given to an Asian creative. There's also the occasional moment within the show that feels slightly like a missed opportunity in terms of the direction. You have these big pylons with barbed wire between them, like these big wooden structures, and they're all gathered together, and at one point in the show they are spread out to then become a fence behind which the interned Asian families gather. And it's just at an incidental point in the show, musically, they just pick them up and they move them, and it feels like that could be more of a stirring moment. Equally, the moments of the show that lead into Pearl Harbor happening and lead into Hiroshima happening don't really ease into it in the most tension-building way. It feels as though it could learn something from Come From Away and the way they build up to the moments of the show that reference the actual historical points around which everything else is happening, when they lead up to the president's address, or when they lead up to finding out about what had actually happened and watching the 9/11 footage. When Pearl Harbor is announced, it comes slightly out of nowhere, and you have to make a choice. Either that could jar completely and interrupt a very happy scene, and someone could run in with fear and panic. It's like the slightly chilling moment in the opening of Come From Away when one character tells another to turn on their radio and you can hear in their voice, and then in the music afterwards, the scale, emotionally speaking, of what's happened. Or you build up to it and you allow that tension to rise so that this can be a dramatic moment and we as an audience understand how significant this is going to be for the plot of the show. This is not only something that is huge happening on the world stage, but it is also completely shattering the lives of the characters who are listening to this in real time. Equally, and I feel like this is just after we hear about Pearl Harbor, the Japanese-American characters have been hanging little wishes. They've been writing wishes on pieces of paper and hanging them on trees, and then they remove them all. And I feel like that could also be done in a more poignant way, and that could be representative of so much more. When they are tearing their dreams and their aspirations down, they just sort of take them off quite quickly so they can move those pole structures. And it just feels like there's something more artful and meaningful and poignant that could have been done with that entire sequence. The only other criticism I have of the show is occasionally the lyrics are a little bit on the nose. For the most part, they're also very uplifting, and they cut to the core of the emotions. He's singing about what makes a man. They are singing about it being our time now. There's a love song in the first act that is reprised in the second act and has a completely shifted meaning. I love those moments in musical theatre. I think that's very clever. But there are occasional moments as well where the lyrics feel a little bit too blatant and you want just a little bit more metaphor, something a little bit more poetic to put the same point across. The lyrics are saying exactly what they need to, but they're saying it a little too literally. I think a lot of people would enjoy this show. I drew comparisons to Les Mis earlier because it's another historical story about people rising up in the face of oppression and enduring these atrocities. It has those same kind of morals. It has the same kind of ultimately uplifting vibe. It has a soaring score, beautifully performed. I think this show will absolutely resonate with Asian communities, but just like you don't have to be French to go and enjoy Les Mis, you do not have to be of Asian descent to go and enjoy Allegiance. I think it's a remarkable piece of theatre that speaks to just these basic human emotions. If you enjoyed Come From Away, if you enjoyed Les Mis, you will love Allegiance at the Charing Cross Theatre. It's an incredible show, and I encourage everyone to go and see it. I can absolutely endorse and recommend this one. And it's worth saying as well, it's in a really intimate venue. If you want to be closer to these fantastic performances, a guaranteed fantastic view, they are just feet away from you giving these impassioned renditions of these beautiful songs, then you can do so for a cheaper ticket price than you could do in a West End theatre. You're not going to be miles away, you are right there with them, and if you haven't necessarily had that kind of an off-West End intimate theatrical experience, why not make this your first? So those have been my thoughts on Allegiance, the musical, at the Charing Cross Theatre. If you've been lucky enough to see this already, let us know what you thought in the comment section down below. If you saw it on Broadway, let us know what the Broadway production was like. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for plenty more content and more reviews coming very soon. Also, as a reminder, you can click on the link in the description to sign up and become one of my YouTube members. You'll get early previews of many of my new videos, as well as a lot of exclusive content and my first impressions review series. Finally, don't forget to sign up to Show Score to review shows for yourself and read all of the written reviews that I have done for London-based shows. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day.
For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh. Oh my god, hey. Thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!